Good afternoon, everybody. This is Neil Costa from HireClix. Thank you again for joining us. We're going to get rolling and appreciate you taking some time out of your day to join us for this webinar. Really, in the end, the webinar is called Recruitment Advertising Back to Basics, High Performance Recruitment Marketing for 2021. So I'm going to give you a one little orientation thing. If you haven't been to a Zoom webinar, there's a chat where you can ask questions. Rachel Cecilio from our marketing team is going to be manning that chat today. And so she's going to be fielding any questions you might have and throwing them my way at the end of the webinar. So we've set aside about 10-15 minutes at the end of the webinar to answer any specific questions you might have, or about the content of the webinar, or even any questions you have about recruitment advertising or planning for 2021. So feel free to fire away, and we're happy to address anything that comes up. So overall, the overview of what we're trying to cover today is really making sure that people have a strong fundamental base and understanding what their options are when it comes to recruitment marketing. There's really, now more than ever, there are a ton of options out in the marketplace as a talent acquisition team when you're trying to figure out where to advertise your jobs. And despite the tumultuous 2020 that we've had, we are seeing a lot of people invest in recruitment advertising channels to try and continue to grow, to try and staff back up after some of the slowdowns earlier in the year. And our goal is just to make sure that you have an understanding of what your options are out there, how they work at a fundamental level, and that way you can make better buying decisions. So you might ask, how is it that we have that expertise? And I'll give you a little bit of background on HireClix. Again, my name is Neil Costa. I'm the founder and CEO. Started HireClix in 2010. And so we've been at this for about 10 years. Prior to that, myself and several people on the team used to work at monster.com on the internal advertising agency at Monster. So our job was to go out and drive job seekers back to Monster to search for a job. We started HireClix with the idea that we could go and help corporate TA teams build out their own customized strategy and drive candidates back to their own site and into their own talent community. So that's a little bit about the company. And again, some more detailed stuff. We're based outside of Boston in Gloucester, Massachusetts. And we serve probably about 60 clients at this stage. And the clients really range in industry, company size, budget size. We've got clients that spend anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 a month on their recruitment advertising, up to clients that spend 6 figures a month on recruitment advertising. So and the range of industries is everything from government contractors to retail to food service, technology companies, biotech companies, you name it. There's really a great diversity of types of campaigns that we've had to run for our clients. As kind of our overall services, just to give you some idea of where our primary practice areas are, we're a marketing agency, and we work as an advertising agency of record. We have really deep expertise in running programmatic job advertising campaigns. We've been doing it since the technology was available. And really, we run media buying on any type of channel, whether it's digital, offline, online, and really where the rubber hits the road is kind of figuring out how do you continue to optimize those campaigns? How do you report back to the client on what they received for the investments in those types of advertising campaigns, and providing the insight and the analysis. In addition to that, we have creative services. We've got a team that does some fantastic work. The creative is really one of the most exciting parts of the agency. And then we've also, in the last several years, we've added actual TA practitioners that allow us to have a strategic TA consulting practice, helping people pick technology, process improvement, assessments, technology assessments, team assessments, et cetera. So that's a little bit about us, and we'll just go over what we're going to cover today. And is a little bit of a roster of different things, but the key thing here is that you'll see we're really going to try and cover we're going to really try and cover the kind of philosophically how we look at recruitment marketing, the recruitment marketing continuum, we'll call it. And then we'll go through several different media buying options as you think about where to put your recruitment advertising dollars into in 2021. So cover all these. So I'll start with the recruitment marketing continuum. This is something that we've been using as a guide in order to help us have discussions with our clients about where to invest their dollars. And really at either end of the spectrum, or either end of the continuum, I should say, you have on the left-hand side, direct response. And then on the right-hand side, you have employer branding. And the reason why the continuum goes up from left to right is that on the lower left-hand side, you can see recruitment advertising channels, recruitment marketing channels like Indeed and Appcast and LinkedIn and Glassdoor, things that you would normally see in a recruitment marketing budget. And the reason why they're closer to the left and lower on that continuum is because they're more related to direct response campaigns. And what I mean by that, and that's a term that goes back to, if you're talking to your consumer, your corporate brand marketing team, you can often talk to them about direct response campaigns, because really what you're expecting is you spend money and you get a direct action. And so in our particular case, what we're trying to do is get a direct response apply. So the lower cost, more related to to getting an apply the advertising channel is, the further down to the left that it's going to be. So you can see that Indeed and Appcast and are at the most efficient, lowest cost per apply, and most likely to get a direct response. And again, this isn't all the advertising channels. This is just a sampling of them. As you start to move up to the right, you start to see things like LinkedIn and Glassdoor. And because those types of advertising channels have a little bit more branding associated with them, we start to see the costs go up a little bit when it comes down to measuring the effective cost per earning an apply. But there's also more branding elements and opportunities. So, and as you go further and further up and to the right, you can start to see us map out where some of the consumer marketing channels fit into the mix here. You see Facebook and Instagram on the social media side. You see Google from a major search engine side versus a job search engine. And then you start even dabbling in consumer media sites like Spotify, video on demand with Hulu, and then your kind of big brand media sites like ESPN and Wall Street Journal. So we feel as though we can still get applies from those channels on the far upper right, but we do think that there is more of a premium when you're trying to get someone who's managing their fantasy football team on ESPN and they happen to see a job ad. There's a heavier cost or freight to get your brand in front of them, because you're competing with more consumer advertisers, and it's a little bit more expensive to try and convert them to an apply. So this often helps us measure out what a client is really trying to achieve, either with their annual budget and their overall campaign, or whether it's with a specific spot campaign in a certain market or for a certain type of job. We use this to really try and help guide and map out what type of advertising we need to do. So hopefully that's a helpful guide, and it's something that we use really every day for our clients. So when we start jumping into, identifying what these advertising channels are, how they work, and what's the most effective way to use them, pay-per-click advertising is probably the lion's share of how most job ads are bought today. And, that's a big change. I mean, from the time that, myself and others here were at Monster, everything was on a pay per posting basis. So you would pay, and clearly that was a derivative of how people bought job ads, help wanted ads in the newspapers, that you would pay a certain amount, flat rate for a certain amount of real estate in the newspaper. And that turned into buying a flat amount for a job posting, which was effectively unlimited space, but, one particular page. And that job posting was duration based. You had it for 10 days, 15 days, 30 days, 60 days, you name it. The shift to pay-per-click means that we're no longer paying for static real estate. And really, Google and other search engines, major search engines in the late 90s started to offer this pay for performance type of advertising channel. And it wasn't until I'd say, 2000, maybe 2007 and 8, where Indeed was really starting out, and some of the other job boards, Top USA Jobs, things like that, were starting out in the very early days of offering a pay-per-click model, which was, very similar to what was happening in the consumer marketing world. At this stage, clearly Google is the biggest pay-per-click advertising marketplace. But on the consumer side, we're starting to see Facebook be extremely significant, and Instagram is part of the Facebook family. So that's a challenge. That's a big marketplace as well. But pay-per-click is really in the job board space now the de facto model. Even folks like Monster and Career Builder and some of the other traditional job boards have converted over to offer a pay-per-click option. In those cases, they may also have a legacy paper posting model, but they really have made the move. So understanding how pay-per-click works at this stage for someone in recruiting or talent acquisition is really critical. And I think that it doesn't mean that you have to go out and run the campaigns. And that's clearly what an advertising agency like us will do. But you don't have to, operate the campaigns, but you should definitely have a core set of knowledge on how a pay-per-click advertising campaign works. And really, it's like an auction marketplace. If you're advertising on a particular job, you would want to bid in order to get your job more exposure, and then you would only pay once someone in the marketplace actually clicked on it and expressed an interest in your job. So we'll go into that in a little bit more detail. But one of the key things to know is that if you think about competitive marketplaces like auctions and a pay-per-click market, if just because you bid a certain amount, say I bid $2 a click, and I'm the highest bidder, it doesn't mean that I'm going to pay $2 a click. What it really means is if I'm only going to pay 1 penny more than the next highest bidder. So, effectively someone is, bidding $1.25 and I bid $2, I'm going to win that bid and my ad is going to be placed above theirs, but I'm only going to pay $1.26. I'm not going to pay the full $2. So that's typically how most pay-per-click marketplaces work. As I mentioned, I just wanted to give you some sense of the job boards that are operating under these pay-per-click advertising models. And so it's not just Indeed. It's certainly, some of the bigger players in the marketplace: Indeed, ZipRecruiter, Snag a Job, Talroo, which is, Jobs to Careers, Monster, Career Builder, you name it. Almost everybody is operating under this model. So the really cool part about it is that where in the past I may have had to go out and spend, $20, $30, $50, $100,000 on a job board contract, now I don't have to make that annual commitment and have this hanging over my head that I've got all this job board inventory available to me. I can really manage my budget on a pay-as-you-go basis. So instead of, just using simple math, if I have, $100,000 a year for a job board contract in the past, I can really take that budget and use $25,000 a quarter and divvy it up to all the different advertising channels that I want to test. And if something's not working out because I'm paying attention to the metrics, then I can always stop immediately and move those dollars. So the extra complexity of having a pay-per-click advertising option in most of the job boards is that's the cost side. It's a little bit more complicated, a little bit more active type of management, but the upside is that you have a greater degree of flexibility in how you spend your dollars. And based on my take on it, and having done consumer advertising for the Monster brand for a while, and now having done, built out recruitment advertising campaigns for the last 10 years, that flexibility far outweighs, having to manage stagnant inventory in one particular job board. It allows us to really go out and be active recruitment marketing partners for our clients, because if we don't like the return that we're getting, then we can go test something else. And that type of flexibility is key when, really every dollar you spend is being scrutinized. I'm going to dig in a little bit deeper to Indeed for a couple of reasons. And this is probably the biggest reason. Indeed is these stats here are from a site called SimilarWeb. So if you ever want to know how much traffic a website gets, you should go to similarweb.com and you can type in the name of the website and you'll be able to get stats like this. And what this shows over the last 6 months, from May of 2020 to October of 2020, that the total visits to Indeed has grown from about 310 million visits up to, and that was in May of 2020, up to about 433 million in October of 2020. Now, this is a global number, but on the detailed page, it actually shows the breakdown by country. So you can actually get a very good sense of how much Indeed traffic is happening in each of the countries that they have a job board in. And in the US, of this total 433 million number, about 52% of that traffic is from Indeed. So if you start doing the broad brush math on it, if you've got 200 million visits to Indeed and you've got 300 million people, you start to get a sense of how far and wide the influence that Indeed has over the job seeker. And a couple things on here too that are really interesting, and this should be some basic due diligence that you do on really any site that you decide to advertise on. If you look at the stats underneath the total visits, you can see average visit duration. People are spending over 6 minutes on Indeed for each visit. They're visiting 7 different pages, and I'm sure that's a factor of Indeed recommending other jobs for them to look at when they hit the site. And then the bounce rate is a stat that's typically used in internet advertising for someone who visits, how quickly someone leaves the site. So what the bounce rate means is if you had 100% bounce rate, that means everybody comes to your site, looks at one page and leaves. So basically 2/3 of the Indeed audience is looking at more than one page. So hopefully that's helpful. But basically in the end, what we're looking at here, and having come from Monster when it was kind of in the heyday and had significant market share, you're looking at Indeed being, the key player when it comes to job board searches and consumers' interest in looking for jobs. So getting back to a little bit more of the mechanics on how pay-per-click works, what you can see here is a typical Indeed job search where someone searched for a registered nurse job in Kansas City, Missouri. And, everybody knows Indeed because it generally delivers a lot of free traffic, right? Indeed has this motto that, all jobs in one search is really their mission. And the fact that they go out and index your jobs, if you have 10 jobs, 100 jobs, or 1,000 jobs, they're going to go out and scrape your site or take a feed from your applicant tracking system, and they're going to put your jobs in their marketplace for free. And that's very similar to how Google operates, right? Google goes out and indexes websites and logs them in the search engine for free. And in most applicant tracking systems, they'll actually show you how many Indeed, visits and applies and all that kind of good stuff that shows that, hey, I'm getting a ton of stuff from Indeed. And it's really interesting. After many, many years, people have kind of been complacent and happy with what they get from Indeed for free. And I think that there's a little bit, it's fantastic. It's great that you get that free traffic from Indeed. But when some people often pass on advertising on Indeed because of that, we think that that's slightly misguided. And the reason why is because, for the same reason that companies go out and advertise on Google, Google indexes their site for free. If you have a store on the internet and you're trying to sell things via e-commerce, Google's going to index it. But how do you stand out, and how do you make sure that you get more visibility and more share of the searches? How do you show up when people are doing active searches on registered nurse in this particular case? And so the way that you do that is that you really have to kick off a sponsored job advertising campaign. And that is where you start to engage in the pay-per-click advertising marketplace. You're bidding on your job. You're trying to get it extra exposure compared to just the free exposure. And you're competing against anyone else that has a registered nurse job, either in the country or in a specific market like Kansas City. And the problem with the organic job listings is that, they are free, but they start to time out, meaning that if something goes on the website and it goes on November 1st, over time, Indeed will continue to index more and more jobs that for the more and more registered nurse jobs that would show up before your job. So really, when you kick off a sponsored job advertising campaign on Indeed or any particular site, what you're trying to do is keep your job top of mind, keep your job available at the highest possible position. So that way the job seeker who has an incredibly high degree of intent when they're actively searching on the site sees your job and clicks on it and gets back to your career site or back to your talent community site. So that's really what we're talking about here, is that in the end, the sponsorship sponsorship campaign, the pay-per-click advertising campaign I have to sponsor this registered nurse job will help keep it at the top of the list. And so once it's at the top of the list, if someone clicks on this box here, it will open up a second window in Indeed. And this is actually a change compared to how it originally started. Indeed, originally, when you clicked on that registered nurse job on the left-hand side, it would take you back to your career site. Indeed, I can't even remember how long it is at this point in time, maybe 18 or 24 months ago, had developed this two-pane left and right kind of interface. And so when you click on the registered nurse job over here, it opens this second window here. And then after that, you can actually click apply on the company site, and that's when it'll take you off to the career site. So that's how it mechanically works. You sponsor your job, it shows up higher in the search results. You click on it, it opens the second pane. After that, someone can choose to click on the apply on the company site page. And now you've got a chance to convert that to a apply. And every time they click on the ad, that's when you're paying the 1 penny over the second highest bid. Hopefully that makes sense. The other thing that's happening it's worth sharing, and again, because of the size of the market share that Indeed has, it's worth noting that there are a couple things that they've changed. Over the years, Indeed was very much plain text site, and it was all pay-per-click. And there's a couple things that have happened that are worth noting as you think about your 2021 budget. Again, they've got the market share that should really grab your attention, that it's not all even. Like, the other job boards are important and should be part of your recruitment marketing mix, but Indeed has such a material market share that it's worth paying attention to. On the consumer side, based on the stats that I've read in Advertising Age, Google compared to Bing and Yahoo and other search engines has an 81% market share. So when you see your corporate marketing team do advertising on Google, it's probably not unusual that they would focus most of their energy on Google and not spend as much time on Bing and Yahoo, even though they're in the search engine space. The other factor is that we continue to see a really high return on investment when it comes to working with Indeed, and we'll go through and show you some specific stats on that. But because of the volume, and because of the high level of intent, that's really what we're seeing here, is that there's a very high degree of intent when someone's doing a search on any job board, but in particular on Indeed. We're seeing a very good return on investment, and we'll talk about what that means in a little bit. The other things that we're starting to see are changes to allow for a pay per apply model. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. But in this particular case, this is actually a combination of pay per apply and employer branding in the ad unit you have over on the right-hand side. So this is a mobile screenshot from Indeed that is effectively has a little banner ad on it. And so that little banner ad is called a product called Indeed Targeted Ads. And when you leverage Indeed Targeted Ads, you can do it just for branding and get exposure to job searchers who are hunting in specific job titles, or you can do an Indeed Targeted Ad /apply, which means that you really only pay when someone completes an apply. So, in the former screenshot from Indeed where we showed, the search engine results, and for the registered nurse in Kansas City, we're paying for every click on that. In this particular case, for Indeed Targeted Ads, we can actually choose to pay once we get a completed apply. And so that's a pretty, between having the branding elements associated with this product and only having to pay when the job seeker completes an apply, that's something that if you're not using today on Indeed, it's something that we've seen a tremendous amount of success with, and I think is a pretty monumental shift from what Indeed originally was, with a very heavily text-based job board. So, and then the last part is, if you're not aware of it, Glassdoor has also been bought by the same parent company called Recruit that owns Indeed. And so Glassdoor's jobs will no longer be powered by Glassdoor technology. Indeed will actually be powering the job search engine on the Glassdoor page. So, you know, if you're working with Glassdoor today, it's something you probably already heard of, but just it's absolutely something to keep in mind as the market evolves. If you're advertising and sponsoring jobs on Indeed, those jobs are also going to get additional exposure through Glassdoor versus having to go and buy jobs directly from Glassdoor. That will not happen any longer in 2021. So again, kind of more not late breaking, but headline news to consider for 2021. Here's an example of a campaign that the HireClix team managed for a client. We jumped in and started managing a campaign for them in Q2. And basically what we've seen here, the backdrop is here that we had a healthcare system that was managing campaigns effectively on their own. And the way that they structured the campaigns and measured them through the applicant tracking system, it was for the nursing roles that they had open, it was delivering about a $2,000 cost per hire. And, you know, for a nursing job, depending on the kind of nursing and the specialty of the nursing practice that you're looking for, you know, $2,000 per hire for a nurse may not be, you know, really may not be terrible. But when, you know, the client was spending over $100,000 a month, you know, we came in and leveraged the expertise that we had to restructure some of those campaigns. And what I mean by that is that when you set up a campaign on Indeed, it can be just as simple as sponsoring one particular job, but based on the expertise we have in the history, we sometimes organize campaigns by geography or by job title or by you know, practice area. And so by doing that and not just setting it once and forgetting it, but by constantly optimizing and, you know, really testing different ways to organize campaigns, we found that over time we could basically bring down the cost per hire for the client to almost a third of what it was before we took over. So I think that the moral of the story is here that you know, clearly our team has a good level of expertise, but even if you manage the campaigns on your own or whether you use them through an ad agency, the fatal mistake is to set campaigns and forget them and just organize them one way and assume that it's being done the most effective way possible. I think that, you know, when you have these pay for performance campaigns, and pay-per-click is one of those models for pay for performance, you just have to have this kind of relentless pursuit to continue to get the best value and get the best return on investment. And I think that's what is reflected here in this really significant sized Indeed campaign for a hospital. The next model that we wanted to talk through is a pay per apply model. So I did mention it a little bit on the Indeed targeted ads campaign, but the pay per apply model has grown, you know, pretty wide and far in, I'd say, the last 24 to 30 months, maybe even a little bit longer than that, maybe 3 years or so. And I think that all it is the pay per apply model means that you're not going to pay for a view of a job posting. You're not going to pay for a click on a particular job ad. What you're going to pay for is only upon the completion of an application on your applicant tracking system. And I think that the best part of this for someone who's, you know, really watching their budget and managing their budget is that you effectively get to pick your price on what you're willing to pay for an apply. So if I'm looking for store manager jobs as a retailer, or if I'm looking for delivery drivers as a major e-commerce site who needs to get delivery drivers out in the field, I'm only going to pay when I get the completed apply. And so, you know, you might ask, well, how does someone know that? And there's a little tiny snippet of code. I'm making a gesture that it's really small. No, it's not a real thing. It's on a web page. Basically, you put a little snippet of code on the thank you page or the apply completion page on your applicant tracking system, and that sends a beacon back to the job board who's offering the pay per apply model. So in the case, if we were to use Appcast as an example, Appcast is one of the companies that started to really pioneer pay per apply models. And, you know, if they put a little little beacon on your page, they can track, from wherever the advertisement was placed. The tracking follows the apply to your site through your apply system. And then when that person crosses the finish line, so to speak, the little beacon snippet of code sends a signal back to Appcast and says, company X got a new, delivery driver apply, and they agreed to pay $15 for that apply. And so that's how you incur the cost. When someone finishes, the beacon sends a signal back to Appcast. Appcast says, basically puts one up on the scoreboard, and you owe them, $15 for that apply. And again, the cost per apply that you agree to in these models, in the pay per apply models, really varies a ton. It varies a ton by the job title. Software engineers are going to be far more expensive than delivery drivers. Nurses are going to be more expensive than retail associates. And so, and then you're also going to see variance across different geographies. It's extremely hard to get drivers in San Francisco, Chicago, Los Angeles, DC, big major markets. So, a driver apply in those markets might cost $50, $75, $80 per apply. So, and then the last factor is that, what about my competition? How many people are looking for that same type of person? And, I think that, someone like Amazon has done a ton of advertising, not just in the online space, and everything from, billboards to gas toppers to television ads. They've created a level of competition that, makes these types of roles far more in demand than they have been in the past. So, that's a factor as well. It's not just the geography. It's not just the job title. It's also what's happening with the competition. And you have to remember that the more and more people that finally get ready to jump into the digital advertising marketplace, the more complex and more competitive that it's going to be. So that means that, demand is driving higher costs. So, and I would say that, you saw the list earlier with all the pay-per-click advertising options. Many of those job boards also offer a pay-per-apply model. So it really just depends on which approach you have, which job type you have, and whether pay-per-apply is available or not. So the way that you kind of decide, do I want to do pay-per-click or do I want to do pay-per-apply, is it's really how you manage risk. And if I'm going to pay $1 a click for 20 clicks and I only get one apply, that means I have a $20 cost per apply. If I can go and orchestrate a campaign, with a vendor to only pay $15 per apply on a cost per apply or pay per apply basis, then it makes more sense to run a pay per apply campaign because I'm saving $5 with every single apply. Now, if you've got a really great employer brand and you've got a really easy apply process, you might get an apply with every 5 clicks from a campaign. And this is why it's so critical to understand, how is the candidate experience, how to measure everything, how to track everything. And that way you have visibility into which items, which campaigns are working and which ones aren't. And that way you can make better buying decisions. Another thing that I wanted to mention is job ad networks. So we've basically got an example of a job ad network is where you place a job ad network goes out and buys lots of advertising inventory from many, many different sites, and you only have to go back and buy from them directly. So really, it's effectively a one-stop shop. If I want to go to Appcast or Results Generation or some of the other job boards that are out there, you can buy through one job board and they'll distribute it to, dozens or even hundreds of other job boards or even other consumer sites. And that type of media buying, the job ad network buying, is a way to, get rather large scale without having to go down through every individual job board and buy something directly from them. The job ad networks are typically done on a cost per click or a cost per apply model. So it really just depends on which vendor you work with. Next, there's been a ton of talk about programmatic job ads. And, this is really, again, like I mentioned at the beginning, probably, at this stage, 3, 4, 5 years where it's become kind of mainstream. I think that what we're looking at with programmatic job ads is that, there's a level of automation in how you manage your campaigns. And What I mean by that, when you leverage a programmatic job ad platform, you get to take advantage of automation that says, hey, if I get 25 applies for this job, automatically shut the campaign off. If I spend $150 for this job or this group of jobs, automatically shut the campaign off. So effectively what we're looking at is there's a complex rules-based bidding platform, and you can tie whether campaigns are turned on or turned off based on key metrics. So it's really one of the things that's happened a lot on the consumer marketing side. The job board world is a little bit behind consumer marketing in general. But when we have a significant amount of jobs, a large volume of jobs, we tend to find that we're able to become more and more efficient when we leverage a programmatic job ad platform. So that's something that, one of our clients that has, literally tens of thousands of jobs around the world, we're finding significant value when we're trying to manage a campaign, and we can leverage a programmatic job ad platform. So the side effect of that is that there's just much more data to analyze. So going back to the theme of like making sure you don't set it and forget it, more jobs, more spend, more data means more time that you need to spend analyzing all that data. One of the key things that everybody should be thinking about right now is just employer branding. It's easy to say, because I'm advertising, I'm getting my employer brand out there. But I think that in this particular marketplace, especially where you have a lot of people that are working from home, sitting at home, it needs to be approached in a very different way. So you really have to know what your brand is. And this is just a super old school Apple ad that I really like, that I wanted to just throw up there. But, if you don't know what your brand is and what your value is, especially after this year, that's challenging for you to go out and market and advertise. And the baseline thing that's important when it comes to employer brand is, how am I going to connect with the audience that I'm targeting? And so, you really have to understand yourself. And if you haven't done that deep dive, or if you feel like it's too hard to do, or it's, but it's not you haven't put pen to paper on it, it's absolutely critical that you work with your corporate marketing team, you figure out, with your employee base on who are we and who are we trying to attract and what are we offering out to the marketplace. The second thing I have here is that you should know your experience. And what I mean by that is your candidate experience. Is it a crappy candidate experience? Because if you think that you have this great employer brand and you're sending people through, a really bad experience, then it's just, you're going to be wasting money, to be honest with you, no matter what advertising channel you use. And then the more that you understand your employer brand, the better you understand the types of personas that you're targeting. One of the things that we've done extensively over the last, I'd say especially the last 4 or 5 years as we've added the consulting group, is that we really try and define what the personas are for people in our company. So I think that we're basically trying to make sure that we know, are we targeting, a certain type of audience because we know that a certain person fits into a store manager role. And I think that you've got to be really careful when you do persona work. We're not trying to target so much that we inhibit our goal of creating a diverse workforce. So that's why it's really critical to make sure that you know who your audience is, figure out which channels you want to advertise on. And when I say test consumer channels, if you go back to thinking about the continuum, and what's up in the far right top of the continuum, that's where we're really trying to test out our clients' advertising on consumer sites. We're doing a ton on Spotify right now, and we're able to drive candidates either back to a site on Spotify, or we use a text message call to action on Spotify that then delivers them a landing page to maybe join a talent community or start a job search for a client. When you talk about consumer channels, we're trying to, get our brand out there and almost provide a little bit of air cover and awareness for the company and its employer brand. And that way we're able to convert better on some of those direct response channels down the road. The other thing that I think is paramount right now is investing in your creative assets. I think that in general, the recruitment marketing, recruitment advertising world has been very stagnant and not quite as innovative as it as it could be, and certainly not nearly as innovative as the consumer world. And we strongly believe that employers who invest in creative assets will win when it comes to getting their employer brand out there. And I think that, again, you have to know thyself first before you go out and start creating a bunch of assets. But the other part is that it needs to be really closely aligned with your corporate marketing brand standards. You can't just go rogue and create assets for the sake of doing them. They have to be part of the overall story. An employer brand is a, family member of the corporate brand, and you have to be mindful of that when you're building out creative assets, whether those assets are the career site in general, whether it's the landing page, banner ads, even the video has become one of the most important creative assets that we're developing right now. So our video production and editing capabilities are like slammed, because getting ads out on YouTube or getting ads out onto other consumer sites is a huge priority for us and our clients. So this is just taking a little bit of a step back and thinking about this from a 50,000 foot level. We often have this discussion about innovation versus execution. And last year in 2019, we won an award as the most innovative recruitment advertising agency. But there are often times that innovation looks like the very exciting, very cool thing to try. As new products, new solutions, new technology comes out, you want to try the cool stuff. The problem with that, and the balance that we have to find every day, is that you really have to be good at executing on the core, the basics, the blocking and tackling of running campaigns, measuring campaigns. You need to have an incredibly high degree of confidence that you're doing the 80 or 90% of the stuff that has to be done in an extremely efficient way. And that way, when you do that, you actually create more time and more opportunity to go out and try and be innovative, to find the innovative solutions. If you know that you're going to get, if you have a $10,000 budget every month, and you need to get 1,000 candidates through the door to hire your 200 people every month, then you need to make sure that's like clockwork before you take your eye off the ball and you go out and try and tinker around with a chatbot or AI or something else that feels really cool. And again, that's one of the things that you want to make sure that you have a really strong game plan and that you're executing on the blocking and tackling before you tinker with that stuff. And there was recently an article in Ad Age that talked about all the new innovative technology that's out there right now is almost a little too far from practical use on the consumer marketing world. So it was really this article that emphasized, making sure that your fundamentals are in good shape, that you understand how to execute at the highest level for all of the blocking and tackling. And in that case, in the consumer marketing world, that would be the Google advertising, the Facebook advertising, the YouTube advertising. In our case, that's Indeed and Glassdoor and LinkedIn and Monster Next, Career Builder, all those other job boards, Snag and Talroo and everything we were just looking at, Nuvu. So you've really got to make sure that you've consciously committed to executing really well. And I think if you do that, you'll have a different degree of confidence when it comes to trying new things. So we're just about ready to go to questions, but before we do that, I'm going to leave you with a couple things just to keep in mind. Just myth busting, organic free traffic is good enough. If someone says that in 2020 or 2021, as they're looking at not just Indeed, but any job board that delivers them free traffic, then you're probably missing the mark. If people are searching and getting there organically, that means there's opportunities to make investments that drive more job seekers with a high level of intent. Your advertising bids don't matter. Some people we've heard campaigns where other people talk about, well, it doesn't matter what you bid. It actually does. It's a very complicated and precise marketplace when you're getting involved in advertising in a pay-per-click or a pay-per-apply model. You have to have a thoughtful approach and specific intent in your bidding strategy in order to make an impact. Your ATS data is bad. I actually read that in a white paper from a competitive recruitment advertising agency that was basically saying that you'll never be able to get good data out of your ATS. And I can tell you with 100% certainty that is not true. you can get good data out of your ATS. And it's really just about how you curate the data and the tracking that you set up in order to get the best possible data to use for decision making. Programmatic solves everything. It's part of the solution, and we believe in it, and we're part of that. But I think it's you may hear out in the marketplace that it solves everything, and that's just pretty far from the truth. And lastly, you don't need a recruitment ad agency. This one's self-serving, so I'll own that it's kind of in our best interest. But one of the things that's been a rallying point for us is that we always act as if we're an extension of your team. Our job as a recruitment ad agency is to help guide you through all the things that we just talked about. And in the end, the job is to make you look good, and that's really what our commitment is. So lastly, if you were looking for a playbook to help you get ready for 2021, here are some of the things that I would say are absolutely critical. As you're getting ready to prepare for 2021, pull your data together. Whatever you have, your ATS data, your campaign data, all the reports from all your investments on LinkedIn and Glassdoor or other sites, you've got to assemble all this data before you start making decisions on what to invest in 2021. Once you get it all together, really start to analyze what the findings are in that. And, even if you have to make assumptions on cost per apply or targets on cost per apply, you need to take your goals for hiring in 2021 and back into it. If you have, if you have $100,000 and you have to make, 2,000 hires, that's really, that's a $50 cost per hire. Does it even make sense? And you've got to build up these, these kind of even like theoretical targets to make sure that you're really using practical math to get to your goals. Lastly, everybody should have a recruitment marketing mix that they believe in at the beginning of the year. Once the year starts and real data starts coming in, all bets are off. You want to start optimizing to what's performing and what's not performing. But in the end, you should create a plan and make sure that you, harkening back to what we talked about at the beginning, have the flexibility to modify that plan and optimize and move away from the stuff that's not working and test out new stuff that might work for you. And then lastly, focusing on what we talked about, executing. You have to be confident in how you execute and know the media channels, know which places you're going to get the most effective cost per apply and the cost per hire and quality applicants. But you need to be very, very determined to execute as efficiently as possible. And then maybe even more importantly is being able to adapt and optimize along the way. So that's what I've got there for you. And Rachel, just wanted to see if we have any questions.
We do. We have a couple. The first one is going back to the continuum slide. What about TikTok in regards to appealing to early career hires, especially with that security risk acquisition being final?
Yeah, so really good question. TikTok did not make it onto the continuum, not because we don't think it's a good and viable advertising channel. It's a relatively new advertising channel. So we've actually run several TikTok campaigns at this point in time. The platform is actually very user-friendly. We've run HireClix specific campaigns, and we have a couple client campaigns teed up to run. We're actually underwriting some of the costs of those campaigns so the client can test it in a really safe way and not even incur their budget. But TikTok would fall in the far upper right spot on the continuum. Again, it's very high employer brand value impact. It's relatively hard to click on something and have a resume ready or be ready to apply. So we think that if you're trying to appeal to younger audiences, we've seen incredible levels of engagement, and we've actually seen it be extremely affordable from a cost per click perspective. And I think the reason why it's affordable right now is because it's just so new. There's, not as many advertisers in the marketplace. As it grows and matures as an advertising channel, you'll get more and more people joining the marketplace, and that will drive the cost per engagement up. But right now, I think it's a really good opportunity for an early innovator to jump in and run TikTok campaigns. Cool. Next.
Programmatic. Would you recommend all jobs being placed on programmatic campaign, or is it based on location, number of jobs, etc.?
So the question was, programmatic and whether we recommend all jobs being placed on the platform. So we've seen it work much more effectively when it comes to higher volume jobs. I don't think that there's a particular geographic constraint when using programmatic. You're probably more likely to be successful in the US and Canada. Outside of the US and Canada, we haven't seen the job boards be as ready to accept an automated job feed and handle programmatic advertising. It's just a limitation of the technology capacity at most of the global job boards. We're advertising right now in about 50 different countries on 135 job boards. So we just still see a lot of the international job boards lagging behind where we are in the job board technology space. So I think that you'd want to focus on US, high volume, cooks, drivers, retail, anything that has, multiple openings for one particular job title, you're going to do really well. I think that things like software engineer, is probably more challenging. I think things that you have higher volumes of, like nursing, can be very effective on, through a programmatic platform.
And the last question, is there a way to find a benchmark when making the decision between cost per apply or cost per click if you haven't done any advertising yet?
So the question was, is there a benchmark for cost per apply or cost per click when you haven't done any advertising yet? So I think that the best way to look at that is, if you haven't done anything, then it clearly depends on the job titles, but if they're more of a broad skill set job title, you could probably use between $1 and $2 per click. And if you were looking at the pay per apply model for a very broad, job title, and what I mean by that is retail associate, driver, things like that, you could probably use between $10 and $20, $10 and $25 per apply. If you start scaling up on skills and you start looking at, inside salespeople, enterprise salespeople, software engineers, medical careers, you start scaling up to the $3 to $5 per click. You start scaling up to the $25 to $50 per apply. And even with software engineers, you could see, over $50 per apply in some of those really technical medical areas or software engineering areas. So so hopefully that's some sort of helpful guideline, but there's no substitute for having your own data. And the quick way to do that is, take even as little as $1,000 and spend $1,000 on one of the job boards and a pay per apply campaign or pay per click campaign. I think it's probably easier to activate a pay per click campaign so that we don't have to wait for the pixel to be placed if your ATS allows for that. So I would take $1,000, spend it on a pay per click campaign on the jobs you want to build a baseline on. And to me, that's a statistically significant sample in order to have at least the beginnings of what you would consider your benchmarks for your own employer brand and your own jobs. So.
We have another question come in.
Sure.
Have there been advances in bilingual job posting boards?
Have there been advances in bilingual posting job boards? It's not something we see come up a lot. I mean, it does come up in Canada and Quebec a lot, where we need to make sure that our clients' jobs are compliant and they're available in French and English. But I think that we're still not seeing a huge investment on the job board side to just more broadly make them bilingual. So, if there are jobs in the Southwest in the United States, and could we have that job in English versus Spanish or both? We're just not seeing career site technology produce that type of functionality, and we're definitely not seeing job boards do that. So I think that if someone's a job board that is offering that, I think they're on the cutting edge and they're ahead of the curve. And if someone's doing that from a career site perspective, I think that's also an advantage. I think the downside of investing in that technology, if you're on the job board or the career site side, is that you've got, Google that will allow you to translate a lot in a browser. Maybe it's not 100% accurate, but it might be close enough. So it'd be a lot of consumers will probably rely on the Google functionality versus waiting for a job board or a career site to produce that technology. So, anything else?
Yeah, one more. Would programmatic be successful in a manufacturing arena with one job title, but multiple openings in one geographic locale, 200 plus needs to fill?
So I think that it could be, first of all, it would depend on the geography, and but I think it's the type of role that would definitely be. I would probably test it without programmatic first, out of the gate, and if we struggled with a direct media buy, then we would diversify and try and go to a programmatic campaign. And I'll explain why. So if it's in a remote. The benefit of programmatic is that I can get the jobs out to many job boards in a marketplace where they can all produce candidates, all have the opportunity to produce candidates at a affordable cost. So if it's in a major metropolitan area, then you could actually go out and say, okay, there maybe 5, 10, 15, or 20 different job boards have a good job seeker base in this particular marketplace. So if it's in Tampa Bay or something like that, then you have a wealth of job boards that could contribute and possibly produce candidates. And that's where using the programmatic platform to manage all those job boards and manage that budget would probably be advantageous. If you're in a geography, we had a campaign we ran years ago in Freesiesburg, Ohio, most job boards just don't have reach into those rural markets. So my advice to start would be to kick off campaigns in job boards in the 2 or 3 job boards that might have a significant local presence in order to drive candidates. And in that case, we might just be able to take care of those 200 jobs in that particular marketplace by focusing on the top 2 or 3 job boards, because we might also want to do something more than just pay-per-click, right? If we're trying to create awareness, we might want to buy ads that are not just pay-per-click job ads. We might want to buy ads that have significant employer brand. And once you start adding employer brand elements, you start fragmenting the budget that you can throw towards the programmatic campaign. So it depends, but in a major, my gut, without knowing more details, I'm happy to answer that more of a one-on-one question, but it wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing to try programmatic. I just might do a few things before we get to that. So any other questions?
Nope, that was good.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for getting together with us today. I appreciate you spending time with us, and hopefully you pulled away some nuggets that you can use and plan for 2021. And if you have any questions at all, like I said, the Clixers on our team are here to make you look good and help in any way possible. So thanks for your time. We appreciate it and hope to talk soon.